Hello everyone, and welcome to today's conversation. Today we're going to talk about something that might feel both familiar and a little foreign. That is authenticity. We're not talking about the kind of authenticity that gets thrown around in self-help circles where you're told to just be yourself, to speak your truth and set boundaries. That advice, although well-meaning and relevant, it is not the kind of authenticity that we are going to discuss today. Authenticity, when it comes to survivors, when it comes to people who have experienced early life stress, can feel impossibly distant as a word. It can feel almost irrelevant, almost meaningless. That is a consequence of the nervous system adapting to early life stress, when the nervous system learned very early on that being yourself came with consequences. It learned that having and showing emotions came with consequences. Setting boundaries came with consequences. Expressing likes and dislikes came with consequences. If this resonates with you, then this video is for you. This is for those of you who lost touch with yourself, not just because you stopped caring or because you became lazy or because life got in the way. This is for those of you who had to develop and let go of who you are, of your authentic self, because you had to adapt to your environment. Because your nervous system, in its incredible wisdom, figured out that in order for you to stay alive, in order for you to stay connected and survive, it was more urgent, more of a priority to adapt to your environment by letting go of your needs rather than to develop your identity. That adaptation kept you alive, it kept you functioning, it got you all the way to here today, and hopefully by the end of this video you will feel compassion towards having developed this adaptation, although it comes with a certain grief. The awareness of the idea that you didn't get a chance to develop an identity is going to create grief, of course, but it hopefully will also create compassion and understanding for the lengths that your brain and nervous system went to keep you here, to keep you alive. If you ever wonder, who am I when I'm not performing? Who am I when I'm not monitoring others? Who am I when I'm not making myself smaller, quieter, friendlier, more agreeable, or more convenient than I actually want to be? Let's start by understanding what actually happened in the first place. Because once you see it clearly, so much of what you've been criticizing about yourself will start to make sense. From the very beginning, before you could speak, your nervous system was picking up on your environment and adapting and learning. As creatures who rely on and depend on others and community, especially, before development, your nervous system was learning then what led to closeness and what led to distance. And it was adapting to gain more closeness because it's what you needed to stay alive. You needed to be fed, cared for, etc. Now, it's important to specify that these learnings were not only stored as memories and thoughts. They were also stored as bodily sensations, as expectations, as autonomic responses. And these responses, deep within the nervous system, they happen much faster than conscious thinking. Let's take the example of someone who had a beautiful childhood, safe, loved, cared for, etc. When connection like this, when connection is stable, when emotional safety is relatively consistent, something beautiful happened. The nervous system is able to relax. And as such, it is able to develop curiosity about the world. You're able to play. You can feel your emotions and your bodily sensations in a safe way, meaning that it doesn't feel threatening and your nervous system doesn't feel the need to push them down because they're overwhelming. Authenticity in this context isn't something that is taught, it's something that naturally evolves. But when the opposite happens, when the environment is unpredictable, when emotions are overwhelming or conditional, then the priority shifts into surviving. And instead of relaxing into relationships, the body learns that it needs to perform. So that means that attention moves outwardly. Attention is no longer on the self and curiosity about the self, paying attention to what we like and don't like, trying new things, etc. Instead, the body learns that we have to manage the environment's emotions, and we adapt our needs based on the environment's emotions. So if you're a child and you feel angry or disgusted or emotional about something, you either were able to express that and it was met in a healthy manner, or if you expressed that, it was met with overwhelming emotion, a feeling of danger, it was met with emotional distancing, it was met with punishment or a sense of feeling threatened. And so these cues then begin to matter more to the brain and to the nervous system over what you actually want to express. So this is when you start to manage your carer's emotions. And so at this point, self-expression and self-identity gets put in the back burner and becomes secondary to how to stay connected and survive. But here's what's important to pinpoint is that this strategic survival mechanism was not conscious. It was not a decision made by you. It was automatic. It was physiological. Our brain is amazing in finding ways to survive and would prioritize that over the development of your identity in this case. This is basically what happened. It's almost like programming a computer and installing the wrong software. For the rest of its life, it now operates with this system. And what we're talking about today is either the self-realization of having installed the wrong system, or we're talking about how to find who were you if you lost your identity at such a young age. How do you even begin to find out who you originally were meant to become? So now you might be thinking, okay, I get it. I understand where this comes from. How do I even begin to be myself again? And the answer is something we call neuroception as well as interoception. Neuroception is the process by which your body evaluates your surroundings and evaluates cues in your environment without deliberate thoughts. And it's faster than thinking. There was a study many years ago that came out that showed our reactions when we want to move our arms or muscles, any muscle. The decision of the movement happens long before we move. And it showed that there is time between our actions and reactions. There is time between us consciously thinking we want to do something and our brain having made that decision. It brought questions into who's actually in charge. Are we consciously in charge of our brain? Do we tell our brain how to operate, or does it tell us? Who really is in charge? And in some cases, and this is my opinion, the brain is in charge, because the brain is like a computer. It's been programmed. We've programmed it with our sight and our sensations, our senses. Once it stores this information in the body, it's very hard to undo all the programming, because there are layers upon layers, and some of it gets stored deep in the subconscious where we don't even have access to the memories anymore. One way we can begin to reconnect is with a lot of self-awareness. Self-awareness isn't always related to how we think. It's not always related to, I'm aware of why I behave a certain way. I'm aware that I behave like this because when I was younger, I did this. Yes, that is self-awareness, but it has another layer. Self-awareness is also self-connection. It is also connection to the body's sensation. It is connection to the nervous system. The nervous system is communicating with us all the time. Whenever your heart races or whenever you get shivers, whatever bodily sensation you can connect to an emotion, that is the nervous system communicating. It is telling you, I don't like this environment. I don't like what I'm feeling right now. This is uncomfortable. I want to run away, or let's change how we behave so we make the environment better. Long before your consciousness has established whether you feel safe or not, Your nervous system has already made the analysis and the decision about how to behave, how to react. As such, it has already begun to organize your bodily responses. And this is why sometimes, or a lot of the time, our responses feel automatic. They feel like we didn't have control over them. They feel involuntary. And it's because they are. Another important layer to this is that the brain and the nervous system don't have a concept of time. They don't know that what's happening is in real time or in the past. Your nervous system doesn't distinguish between past and present the way the mind does. Instead, it works on probability. So if something feels familiar enough, it treats it as likely. Once the nervous system has made a prediction, the body then is prepared to respond. And if you have anxiety, this might be a familiar feeling. For instance, if you experience a fight or flight quite often, you will feel this tightness. This is something that the nervous system does in preparation for fight or flight. It will tighten your muscles because they're ready to be used in order to either flee or fight. Your heart rate might increase, your breath might increase, or if it's a fawn response, then your behavior will adjust to what the nervous system has learned as least threatening. That can be, it can be humor, it can be self-appeasement, it can be becoming very agreeable, it can be changing your voice to become softer, more high-pitched, smiling more, making yourself smaller. Another thing is this might explain why you feel more at ease when alone. Because when you're alone, you don't have to perform, you don't have to scan, you don't have to prepare and adapt your responses, your emotions. You don't have to manage other people's emotions. When you're alone is the only time that the nervous system feels relaxed. And shame plays... I've lost my voice. Shame plays a very specific role when it comes to interrupting the idea, the possibility of you expressing yourself, your truest self, in a safe way, in a regulated way. It's the mechanism that is in place. It's a signal that the nervous system uses to interrupt your self-expression. I bring often the example of public speaking, but if you experience glossophobia, the phobia of public speaking, the deep belief behind this phobia is shame, is the deep shame of being fully seen and heard. That brings up the fear of being able to feel safe in a setting like a public speaking setting. Shame appears at the exact moment that you get a need, an urge, a want to express yourself authentically. You might, for example, feel an impulse to speak in a social setting. You might get an urge to show either enthusiasm or disagree or express an opinion about something. And it's immediately followed by an intense bodily sensation that pulls you back, that stops you from expressing yourself. That is shame, and it shows up in the body as a fight or flight response. The body screams, "Oh my goodness, no, what are you doing? No, don't do this." And it prepares you to flee, and it increases your heart rate, your breath, it sends adrenaline out and tightens your muscles, and you decide, this is not worth it. I'm just gonna stay quiet. Shame and self-abandonment are closely related. Shame marks the moment when self-expression feels dangerous, and self-abandonment is what immediately follows. It's the quiet turning away from self-expression, from authenticity. And remaining safe isn't always literal. Most of the time it's not. Remaining safe is just, at this point, it's more so an overwhelming sensation of fear rather than an actual fear. When there is an actual reason to be afraid, you use that response to flee or set boundaries. But here we're talking about wanting to express the self and yet being constantly held back by our own bodily needs, bodily sensations, emotions, and often the mind as well. The way we overcome shame is simply by acknowledging what is happening. It's simply becoming aware of the moments that the brain has recognized a situation as threatening, while you consciously are aware that it isn't. And at the beginning, it will be very difficult to override that immediately. It's something that takes process. It takes little steps, little droplets of allowing the nervous system to express itself and feel threatened, but remaining. If we take again the example of public speaking, it doesn't mean that tomorrow we go out and we do a TED talk, because the body's not going to allow that. The body is still programmed that way. But instead we start with small steps. Think of it as like if you're someone who goes to the gym, the first time you walked in a gym, you didn't walk over to the bench press and started lifting, 100 kg. No, you start with just the bar. Slowly you start to increase the weights. Over a long period of time, you then get to lifting 100 kg. The same process applies to overriding your nervous system. You can't make it go from 0 to 100. You have to go through all the other smaller steps too. So that brings us to, what does it mean to reconnect to the unknown, essentially? What are you reconnecting to if you never got a chance to uncover who you are? There's definitely a grief with the realization that you never got a chance to figure out who that was. There is definitely a grief in recognizing the amount of effort that has gone to managing everyone else instead. There is a grief in acknowledging that a big part of you, or certain parts of you, had to remain quiet for a very long time. It's also important to remember that those adaptations were not a weakness. They were very intelligent survival adaptations. They're also a form of resilience because they have kept you going. They have kept you alive. So for the person who was never able to uncover who they truly are, it's not about mindfully choosing who you are, what you like, what you don't like, because those will have been influenced by your external environment. Instead, it's about listening, and it's about listening to the body. If you've experienced dissociation, if you've disconnected from bodily sensations in order to survive, it can take time to train your consciousness, your conscious mind, to pay attention to the body's signals. Learning to pay attention to moments where you feel at ease and moments where you feel tense. Moments where you feel tense will be overridden by the need to manage everyone else's emotion. The moments where you feel tense will be when your nervous system is activated to respond in whatever way it has learned and adapted, whether that's fight, flight, fawn. And taking a step back and instead just noticing the body is showing me discomfort signals. This moment, situation, conversation is triggering this bodily sensation in me. That means that something in my body does not like what is going on. Perhaps a boundary is being crossed or a boundary needs to be set. And instead of responding the usual way, whether that's by making yourself friendlier, rather just listening and just acknowledging that this is uncomfortable. The next step after that is to not respond in the usual way. Over time, almost like a muscle, start to be able to almost have a conversation with your nervous system by just dropping in. You will notice when your shoulders have tensed up, when your jaws have tightened, when you stop paying attention to how you feel and started scanning the room. When you stopped asking yourself, am I comfortable? But instead are asking, is everyone else here safe? Slowly we start to turn the attention inwardly. And these moments will not look impressive. They will not be cathartic in a dramatic way, but internally they represent a very significant shift. The moment that the body learns to stay instead of leaving is the moment that your nervous system starts to realize that it has adapted in the wrong way and starts shifting towards new adaptations. We slowly increase the capability of the nervous system. And more importantly, over time, it starts to register that being yourself is not threatening. It is no longer life-threatening. That, over time, overrides performance, and you start to gain strength, feel safe in the world, expressing your authentic self. If what I've shared with you today resonated, I have created a comprehensive mind-body program about uncovering the true self, specifically for adults who have experienced early life stress and childhood trauma. You can find more information on the course in the description below, where I will leave it. Thank you so much if you've made it so far in the video. I really appreciate you, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.